Good afternoon, everyone. How are you today? Good, good, good. It's a pleasure to introduce to you our special featured guest lecturer this voyage. I had the pleasure of sailing with him and introducing our sculpture on our sister ship, the Nautica. So we're very pleased to have him with us here on this voyage. Having taught for 30 years, he was a tenured full professor at Moore College of Art and Design and the University of Pennsylvania Graduate School of Fine Arts. He is an award-winning artist whose works are on display in many museums and the Library of Congress. To date, his works have been featured in over 150 exhibitions worldwide. In the past year, he has been invited to make a piece for Fabergé and also had solo shows in London, New York, and Miami. He is a two-time National Endowment recipient and a senior Fulbright Research Grant recipient and is a senior Fulbright specialist in Latin American art. We're thrilled to have him here not only as our artist in residence and again as a special guest lecturer. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Frank Hyder.
Thank you very much. I'll try to make this as painless as possible. My topic today is the Janus, and the Janus sculpture, which you may have encountered in the lobby last night or this morning, and I'm going to give you a little information about it. So Scott, if you want to bring those lights down, we'll get right to the images on the screen. Right. What you see on the screen in front of you is where Janus gets its name. This is a Roman image. This is a Roman coin, which was has a double-headed figure on it. That figure is called Janus. Now, the Romans were a people of composed of many countries, ideas, and ideologies. The only thing that's really unique to the Roman culture was the invention of the god of Janus. The god Janus is the god of new beginnings, new enterprise, new adventure, new business, new relations, war and peace, and at last, the god of the new year, and we named January in his honor. All right? The idea was that Janus could see the future and could watch the past go as he walked into the future. And a good Roman would have had an image like this on the door of their house and touch it as they walked in and out, as a mezuzah might be touched in a Jewish family's home, because you always hoped that Janus would guide you to better relationships in your home and better relationships in the world as you stepped in or out of that door. So, I did not start out to make Janus. I stumbled upon Janus in the making of the piece that you saw in the lobby. And I'm going to give you a little history about my own work. Yes, I have been an artist a long time, and I have taught in universities. I am also a history fanatic, and I read about it constantly, and I travel a lot. So anyway, the combination of all these different things somehow or another come together. Sometimes life comes together in an unusual way, in a surprising form. And my strategy has been to basically say yes to everything, no to nothing, and try almost everything. And as a result, I can list a long line of failures in my life and an occasional success. And I try not to dwell on the successes any more than the failures, because tomorrow may bring another project. So in a sense, perhaps Janus is the god for me, because its new beginnings is always coming forward. So anyway, moving away from Janus, this is a kind of art that really has always intrigued me. This is a piece of Olmec art from central Mexico. We know very, very little about the people who made this sculpture, other than the fact that they made a lot of them, and we find them in the jungle. This figure is probably about 6 or 7 feet tall, but it's quite monumental and quite imposing. I really enjoy finding images like this and seeing sculptures like this, whether it's the Egyptian culture, the Mayan culture, the Roman culture. There's a tradition among human beings of making large images like this. Perhaps somebody will get a chance to visit Stonehenge while here in the British Isles, or to see some of the other monumental art that's left to us from the earlier eras. And anyway, it's always had a big impact on me. Now, This is one of my roots. This is what I would have made as a painting 40 years ago when I was a young painter. I was an observer of life and nature. I was interested in water, the human figure, interested in landscape, etc. This is a piece from my first show in New York. This is quite large, not quite as large as the screen, but pretty big. And here is the beginning of what I would call my real professional life. And what I've done here is all the light-colored things you see on the screen, all that like leaf-like plants, etc., these things, all of those are actually carved into a wooden panel. So they're actually depressions in the surface, and everything else is painted on top, okay? And so I decided to use this tropical image, not because I was raised in the tropics, not because I was abandoned in the tropics, but rather because there's something, for my mind, about all of our roots in the tropical world that we all come from, and this idea that if you want to understand something, you somehow or another need to go into its roots. So this was my first show in New York, which was surprisingly successful and practically scared me to death. I sold all the paintings, and you're not supposed to do that, and it set me on my ear for a little while. This is another piece from that show, all of which I haven't seen any of these for 30 years. So, and this is from my second show, and I took on a more celestial world. But notice I'm still interested in big heads, you know? I always figure out a way to get a big head in the picture. So anyway, moving along. This is a show I had in the Museum of American Art in Philadelphia. It's the oldest museum in America, and I was invited to have a show there. Each of these is 8 feet square, and they're carved into and built onto with wooden pieces, you'll see here, like this. They're quite complex. Up close, they don't resemble people. Up close, they look like this, which looks a little bit like some of the spaghetti you might have had in the Terrace Cafe yesterday. Anyway, when I made this work, I was extremely interested in the fact that these things were heads and their eyes are closed. It's as if they're in a dream. And at the same time, they're immensely powerful and large and looming. And they relate very heavily to that head that I showed you at the beginning from the Mayans or the Olmecs. But again, this was an extremely successful show, and I haven't seen any of this work for a long time either. Anyway, we'll move along. And one of the other issues in my work, ever since I started, I've always been interested in what's called the other culture, the people that are not front and center in society. So I made images of people from other races in my earliest work, and was frequently singled out for it. And as I grew older, I became more interested in other cultures. And this is a segment from a series of paintings I made after spending some time in the Amazon. And I became intrigued with the look of the people in the Amazon. And so I created this enormous installation of these heads, of which I don't have any of those either, but I can single out this section right here belongs to Elton John, and this belongs to a Philadelphia museum, etc. So they bought them in chunks away from me, so the tribe was broken up. Anyway, I spent some time in South America exploring new materials and techniques. This is a mosaic bridge that I made in 1990 in a park in Caracas, Venezuela. I'd never made a mosaic in my life, and I don't know I'll ever make another one, but I do know how to do it. This is in Oxnard, California, and this is half of the piece. It's more than a city block long, and these are ceramic tiles, thousands and thousands of ceramic tiles that I hand-painted and glazed and then transported to California, and we assembled on the spot. A few years ago, I was approached by a choreographer who took some of my writing and some of my paintings, and we created a stage piece together. So my text was read to the dance performances, and I did the costumes and the set design for the piece. And this is an image that a lot of it was inspired by. This was an installation I did in the convention center in Miami Beach during an art fair. You stepped inside the space and walked through and touched the different objects. And then here's a group of women wearing the costumes that I designed in that same stage set space, okay? This is an installation I made in the Philadelphia airport. So you walk into this brightly lit airport and you discover this chamber of light and dark. So it was 21 feet across and 10 feet tall. This I did last year in a museum in Beacon, New York. And this is these windows, each one of these windows is 7 feet wide and 12.5 feet high. So I painted this on translucent plastic that hung in front of the windows. So as the light changes outside, they change color all day long. Now, in 2008, I was approached by a curator in Miami about making an inflatable. I didn't even know what an inflatable was, but I said yes immediately because that's my policy. I already explained that. I say yes, and then I figure it out. And so I then spent a lot of time designing it. So there were 10 artists, and we installed these pieces 2 days before Art Basel was to open. And the day that Art Basel opened, my piece, which is this gray piece right here, is 30 feet tall, came out in the front page of the Miami Herald the day that Art Basel was opening. Well, if you don't know what Art Basel is, it's the largest art show in America. It's the event of this season in the art world, and I had a lucky day that day. So anyway, this is a picture of it in the daylight from the back. And as soon as I made this piece, this is downtown Miami in the daylight, as soon as I made this piece, I was convinced that there was mileage in this form. I love the idea that I could pack that up, put it in a suitcase, and take it out and put it up someplace else. And now here it is in Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania, in the Pocono Mountains. And here it is in Caracas, Venezuela, downtown. And then I took it to the Andes Mountains and went from village to village and set it up and had everybody come out and get a picture taken with it, and then we'll go on to the next village. All right? So for me, this is a kind of action-based art. You take it out of the studio and out of the museum, and you put it in front of people, and they scratch their head and decide whether they like it or not. But it brings art into the world in a way that is really a step apart from the traditional means. Now I'm going to take you through a few steps. When I get one of these sculptures, this thing looks like, to me, like a giant bag or a big potato, right? So when I get it, I'm kind of bewildered as to what it's going to look like. So I just start painting, and the process goes on. As I speed through these things, you're seeing 4 days worth of work, 12 hours a day, sort of condensed now. And it involves a lot of calisthenics. You have to crawl down, you have to climb things and work because they're kind of large. Notice that table is set up on such a very sound, the ladder is sitting on top of a table. It's not recommended. So the painting just evolves, and by this point, it's starting to look pretty good. And now, this technique, because the structure was not so good, I didn't like the form, I did something called trompe-l'oeil painting. You see that? That's flat there, but I made it look like you could reach your hand behind it. You know what I'm saying? That's called trompe-l'oeil, and it's an old-fashioned painting technique that you can use when you want to make something look really good, you know? I know everybody loves things that look realistic, but frankly, it's awfully easy to do sometimes. It's the other stuff sometimes a little harder. So anyway, here that piece is downtown Miami in another show. And then here it is in a show in New York State. And here it is in Baltimore at the Maryland Institute College of Art. And here's another piece on a roof, out of sequence, sorry. And here it is covered with snow. So this is the versatility and the dynamic that I'm starting to see in the pieces. So now my practice is making these things. This is 30 feet tall now. Making these things, there's no way I can sell them. There's nobody who wants them. And after I make them, I have to store them, and then I have to pay for making them. So what would I be doing this for other than a momentary loss of sanity? And my reaction is, well, what I do is I would allow myself to make one a year, and each year try to conquer new problems and solve those problems, okay? So this is for me, this was a big success. See that eye? It's actually translucent and lets light in. And in the belly, right here, hidden from your view, is a window, big window. You can look inside, and when you look inside, you see this on the inside. So I have put Jonah in the belly of the whale. So you look inside, and there it is. What's amazing is that it's black. The material's black inside and out, but I don't know why. When you look inside, it's white, right? And the dots look black. I don't understand it, but it looks terrific. So the eyes of the fish are up there at the top of his head, and then this is Jonah on the inside. Now, here's a smaller one. I switched my scale, and I went to a smaller one. And this is kind of, again, a guerrilla tactic. I walked into a New York City art gallery in Chelsea, and I just opened my package and set it up. Took a photograph, folded it up, went out the door, okay, before they could figure out what I was doing. So now, we're going to be talking specifically about Janus. This is how it starts, a blob. I have this nondescript form that I start with, and that gets translated into a CAD machine, and it rotates in front of me, and I can see it. I stop, print, draw, change, put the information in, and then we keep going. So I modify it so it looks like that, and then the CAD machine produces this. Then I get this, the nice profile. I'm very happy. But I didn't like the back of the head, so I doubled the profile. At this moment, I realized what I was making. Janus popped into the picture. So now I've tuned my guitar a bit to play a slightly different tune. I did not want it to be the same color as Janus the Romans would have made, so I divided the color. Because in no time in my life do I remember the issue of color being more pertinent than it has been these last couple of years in the United States. It may not be an issue in the whole world, but it sure has been everywhere I've looked in the U.S. And so all I'm making here is a very simple statement. They're equal, on the same ground, on the same standing. People just come in different colors. Let's get over it, okay? There's nothing we can do about it. Now, then what I do is I take that image after the form is actually produced, I photograph it in my studio and then draw on top of it and try to come up with how the piece is going to look. This is his package. This is his traveling bag. So I can go to the airport, put this in luggage, regular luggage, and it goes on the plane. And when I arrive wherever I'm going, I can take it out and open it up. I actually think this is a pretty slick deal I've figured out here. You know, it's complete, right? So anyway, here he is without paint for the very first time. And I want you to understand, I was pretty excited because I'd worked for a long time to get to this spot, and I actually felt like I was there. Something was really happening. So, and a few people said, don't do anything. It's perfect. Leave it alone. But I can't leave that. You know, I got to keep going. So anyway, I decided to paint it. So here it is in my studio in a state of rest, not quite fully inflated, inflating himself. And here it is fully inflated in my studio in Miami. And at this point, I shared a picture of this with the cruise line. And they were intrigued by my idea to take it on the boat. We hatched out a plan, and after a whole lot of planning, I said, by the way, did anybody happen to ask Frank Del Rio if we could do this? And they said, well, we were kind of hoping you would do that. because it seems like maybe I might have a better way of getting it through than they would. So anyway, honestly, I sent him an email of about 4 lines with this picture and said, this is what I want to do. And he wrote back, well, no one's ever done it before, but the thing looks cool to me, why not? Right? So that was my approval. And we're ready to go. So now here it is, fully lighted in the darkened space, and I head for his debut in Philadelphia, which was my original hometown, and a museum dedicated to prints of, it's called the Brandywine Workshop and Archive. It's right on Broad Street in Philadelphia, and it's a museum dedicated to art made by people of minorities, African Americans, Latinos, Indians, etc., but not exclusively. So they liked the idea, and they let me debut it on their front lawn right before leaving for Istanbul. I left for Istanbul, and we arrived with my piece, and now you're going to see it go through some paces. And now, Scott, you can let it be lit up. And here he is on the stage for your viewing pleasure. And also note the fact that he can go on stage. This is his first time on a stage. It's you know, and so it's kind of special. He's really not stage fright. Has no stage fright at all. Anyway, so now I'm going to show you how we deflate and inflate. And here we are in many destinations. We've been in Israel. We've been in Turkey, we've been in Greece, we've been in Spain, we've been in Malta, we've been in Cyprus, we've been in France, we've been in Portugal, and we've been on the Riviera and now the Marina. And these are 2 ships that were built, basically the first 2 ships ever built with a floating studio, with the idea of having an artist in residence. Other ships have thought about giving you a watercolor class, but no one has gone this far and created a space, putting someone like me in that space, allowing you to interact with an artist as if it was a normal thing. I know it's shocking because artists are not supposed to be normal, but here it is showing itself off. And it explores the entire ship. It goes on every deck, runs the pool when things are going well, and keeps a lookout for pirates from the upper deck. You can find it in the best of locations. And then we got to, I got down to Seville, and I took it in Seville. I have a cousin who lives in Seville who has a car. So she took me from a bus stop to downtown Seville, and then I went into every store for 3 blocks until I got someone to agree to let me plug in my electrical device. Then we ran a cord down and across the street, and that is the Cathedral of Seville, which is the 2nd largest cathedral in Europe, and we let it ring. So there it is on the street. It attracted people for a couple of hours. It was a big success. People from Italy came to see it. And then my friends, the police, came, and they wanted to know where my permit was, and of course I didn't have one. And I explained that I wanted only a half an hour more, and they said, no, I couldn't have a half an hour more. They wanted me to take it down now. So they agreed to watch me take it down. So I took it down a half an inch at a time. And finally, it goes down slowly and slowly. And so, anyway, then this is out on the street, and you can see it looking down from up above. Here we are in Ibiza, Spain. Then here we are in Barcelona. They allowed us to bring it into the customs station and set it up, right? So everybody got to see it. I think it's rather fun there. And people like to have their picture taken with it. I encourage everyone to have their picture taken with it. And when you post the picture, hashtag the Janus Project, and it will join the mass of information out there, okay? But anyway, here you wonder what that man is doing, and who is he, and why am I letting him do that? And it's Jacques Pepin. And he was kissing the sculpture, and his response was afterwards, he said, "Hey, that's not a bad kisser." So anyway, I sent this picture yesterday to the home office, to Frank Del Rio, and asked him what he thought, and he wrote back that it warmed his heart to see that it had stimulated so much reaction and was getting such a response. Here we are on the outside of the deck, on the main staircase. This is on the Riviera. Here watching the pool again. A few more sightings. And then we went to Monaco. And then we made it to the streets of London and set it up on the sidewalk in London. And right in front of this is a gallery that shows my work in London. So I thought it was a fitting place to arrive. Now, what's next for Janus? Well, I'm going to be on this ship until we get to St. Petersburg, and that'll be my last stop. My point with Janus is then that I have gone from Istanbul on the Bosporus, the entire outer rim of Europe, to St. Petersburg. I try to think big, and that's as big as I could think and get away with it, okay? So I will end in St. Petersburg. I will go back to Miami with the sculpture, and I've been invited to come to Philadelphia again. The Pope is coming to Philadelphia in September, and the museum asked me to do a show. So they're going to put my sculpture here with the arms out in front of the museum on the street, and then they're going to put my Jonah at the entrance going in, and then inside will be Janus and another piece like Janus, and on the back wall, this is a 20-foot painting that deals with the indigenous people and the forest, and the Pope has just made a formal apology for the Catholic Church's position on the issue of indigenous peoples worldwide. And so I feel kind of